Alrighty guys, better late than never. Here you can see in front of me the complete Wave 2 of the Australian version of packaging of the Thomas & Friends Minis, which are a series of micro-sized take-and-play style trains designed to celebrate 7 years of Thomas & Friends. Now you're probably going, this review is so far behind all the other reviews on YouTube, even the Australian ones. And there's a quick reason for that, and I'll explain that in a second. But first, let's get to it. Alrighty, so the reason this video has taken so long to get prepared is because the difficulty I had in actually finding the Wave 2 Thomas Minis. Now, I actually am subscribed or liked the Thomas & Friends Facebook page, and they announced it just a few days before I saw Leo Video upload his video where he had managed to find multiple boxes of the Thomas & Friends Wave 2 Minis. Now, legitimately, on finishing that video, I went out to my local Kmart, which, in Wollongong, which is a satellite city of Sydney in New South Wales, Australia. And I went to that Kmart, which was open 24 hours, and there was one box of Thomas Minis that had 2 trains left in it. And those 2 trains were this one here, the Robo Charlie, which we'll look at in a second, and also the Mono or Old School Luke. So those were the only 2 that I had. I went back to that Kmart, I checked the Target and the 2 Toys R Us's around Wollongong, I went to the Myer and the David Jones, and the only places I could find the Thomas Minis, which was only about half those stores because the rest sold out, they only had Wave 1. And so for over a month I was looking for Wave 2, and finally when I went back to my hometown to another Kmart, I found 2 whole boxes of Wave 2, and between those 2 did manage to complete my collection. So that's why this video has taken so long to actually get made, because it's taken me way too long to get my hands on these awesome trains. Alrighty, so without further ado, let's have a look at them. Alright, so the first 2 I want to look at are the 2 metallic engines. Now, these, again, are amazing. The reviews I've seen were not overstating these at all. The metallic engines are certainly some of the highlights of this series. I mean, if we just take a look to appreciate the shine that these engines have, it's just, it's incredible. For the size, for the money that you spend on them, which as I said is like $3 each, the finish that you get on these metallic ones is awesome. Particularly awesome is the way they do give you like metallic kind of wheels. Now they're not metallic, but they're certainly a darker, richer shade than the normal standard blue wheels, which you see on, for example, Thomas in a minute, which I'll show you when we get to him. So this Gordon is fantastic. You can see those details just pop. Edward's the same. It is interesting to note that it is the same shade of metallic blue in both the wheels and in the actual detailing, which is true to a lot of Edward and Gordon models, which do employ the same colour blue as per the TV series. But just something interesting to note that side by side, these 2 actually do look sometimes very similar, due to the fact that they are actually the same blue. And it's really the faces that differentiate them at the start. But we've already kind of seen those faces before, so we know what they look like. On to the classic engines. Now, I mean, I think these are going to be the underrated gems of the mini series. I think a lot of people are a big fan of the detailed ones, and I think I explained this in the first part, that I actually quite like the classic ones because they're actually a rendition of how they look in the show, and I think that sometimes can really decide how good a toy is. So right in front of us we've got Percy. I actually prefer this Percy to the haunted, spooky mummy one, only because you can just kind of see a little bit more of Percy in there, rather than just that. Although it was very impressive, the bandage printing, this is just a really nice look of Percy. I think they did a really, really good job in capturing his shape and his size into this kind of compact package, and I think his face particularly is quite Percy, particularly for the way it does look in the CGI series as of now. The details like these ones here are ones that lack on almost all of the larger toys, I would say, and it's very impressive to see them in such a small scale. Salty is one where I think I actually prefer his pirate version. I think he's very nice again, the details are very nice. I think his face is a bit plain maybe. He looks a little bit just kind of like bored almost in that face. But that aside, I think he's a very nice model, just probably a little bit less exciting compared to his other version. But the detailing and printing on these, again, I cannot fault. It's so very well done and very refined, and makes them look very, very professional. Skarloey is one of my favourites of the new classics. I think they did an awesome job in capturing the way he looks. I think he's the him and Luke are the only two narrow gauge engines, along with Millie. So he's the only classic narrow gauge engine, but I think they did an awesome job. I think he looks fantastic. I like the colour. It doesn't show up quite as well on the camera, but the red is definitely like more of that kind of pinky red that you see in the TV series, rather than like a bright James red. But it's probably not quite as pink as it looks on the video, but that's okay. So he just looks really, really nice. I like the black wheels. I think they work very, very well. The face is spot on. He might actually came with our two like little brochure things that tell you what engines are in each series. For some reason, Skarloey had 2 of those in his packet, so it's kind of just something to note. The next one's Samson. Now, he's a relatively new character. I think he's a really funny shaped character in that, considering how small the prototype is, in the show, he's very, very large, which is kind of bizarre to me. But I also like the way they picked a very strange looking engine. I like funky looking engines. We've got a lot of normals looking XtremeTrainz. Let's get some weird ones. So I think he actually looks quite cool in the minis. I think the funnel suffers a little bit from probably being a little bit too flat. But that aside, I think again the detailing is quite impressive. I think the fact that they've actually gone and made these sculpted details, such as the little domey things all on the top here, really show how much effort they've put in. And like even on the back, you can see it's not just flat, it does have that kind of, you know, stepped look on it, which is really, really impressive to see. Now this diesel, again, I actually think I like the mono version possibly better, but that said, this is all very cool looking diesel. The black is very black, very dark. It's really just very much his face, contrasting with everything else as it should. The only thing that would make this diesel better for me is if it had that kind of devious face rather than that really happy face that you see here in this video, but that's okay because that's a very nice diesel. Millie's a really nice one. They did a really cool job with the colours. I like the way they use that kind of, it's a bit of a purpley blue, which again doesn't show up awesome on camera, but it's a kind of a purpley violety blue thing with that nice gold. That's really, really nice to have that gold running board in there. That makes a lot of difference in the way that she looks. And again, you can just see the amazing amount of fine details, like all the way down to the Ulfstead Castle logo on her cabin. And it's just amazing what they've done with these guys. But yeah, she's very well done. And then the last one of the classics is Sydney, who I am bewildered that he was included, considering he's like had 3 or 4 lines and that's literally it. But again, that's just them trying to reuse that diesel mold, which is a very nice mold, so it's okay. And he's got a very nice blue, actually. It's a very nice, rich, deep blue. Again, it's showing up a lot brighter on camera than it is in real life, but it's a very rich, dark blue. And that creates a nice bit of contrast to some of the other engines we've got in the line. Moving right along, we've got 2 Robo engines now. There were none of these in Wave 1, but they've appeared in Wave 2. And wow, this Robo Toby, I mean, I like the neon Toby, I like it a lot, but the stuff like having these roof details painted on, awesome. Awesome, awesome, awesome. This Toby looks very, very cool. The black wheels contrasted with the yellow underframe, with that grey kind of running frame, grey roof, and then the paint all the way around except for that back part, but that's okay. Awesome. This is an awesome looking Toby, very, very cool. Love the way this robotic stuff kind of looks. Haven't got the original Charlie yet, but again, this Robo Charlie is very, very impressive. The fact they printed like his name on there, and he's got so many rivet details. Like if you're a rivet counter, you're gonna love it. There's so many to count on him, and it's just really awesome. His face is fantastic. They've even painted like the little light on there. And they've just done a really, really incredible job of making this pop, and I think it's a very, very cool looking figure. What am I saying? Train. And I'm really, really impressed with what they've done with this one. Get to our only neon one in this series, and that's Bash. Or is it Dash? Let's see, it is Bash. There you go. Alright, cool. He's probably not as impressive, I don't think, as Neon Toby, only because his colours are like relatively garish and odd when he's in that normal orange version, so they're not quite as shocking as they could be, I think. But that said, I still think it's quite a nice look. And just looks kind of weird, and like kind of like this one looks more like vomit, I think, than Toby does. But that's probably not a bad thing. I don't know. It depends what you like. On to the Mono series. Spencer to me is an odd choice for Mono because he's already grey anyway. Like he's silver, so making him grey kind of doesn't make a lot of sense to me. But that said, it's a very nice looking Spencer either way. The face is very good, maybe a little bit too much chin, but that's okay. The stuff like that, these details on the back of where, like, you know, his tender joins onto the coaches is really impressive. And just the way they've captured that, all the shapes in such a small form is very nice. So yeah, he's definitely a very nice model, just not sure about the colour scheme. Mono Luke, on the other hand, fantastic. Again, very cool job with the rivet detailing. Like, very, very detailed. You can feel it. Like, it's relief. You can feel it if you're on your fingers over it. The face is there. Those little extra bit of water tanks on the front are there. Cables, whistles, everything. Very, very cool. I'm keen to see him in the normal version so that he's not grayscale like this. But, again, very, very cool. Again, though, just questioning why Luke gets to be grayscale. I feel like having some of the classic characters would have been a little bit cooler. Alright, a couple more to go, and then we're on to the end of this series. Alright, so the last ones in this series, we've got 2 hero ones from this series. We've got Hero, which is kind of cool. He's very nice. I wouldn't have actually picked him as a hero when I first got him out of the thing. I didn't quite realise, because of the fact his colours are quite similar. So again, I'm not sold on the way they've done the colours, although I do like the fact they put like that H there. And they've kind of put that little face masky latex spandex thing on the front. But again, I'm looking forward to getting a proper version of Hero, because I think he looks very, very cool, and it's a very nice little mould of him. Thomas is awesome. I really like what they've done with him. I think he looks very, very cool. And if you're into the superhero ones of these, definitely try and get that. I think it's a Comic-Con exclusive, which is actually like licensed DC minis. So there's like Thomas Superman and, you know, the Joker, Diesel 10 and that kind of stuff. Because these look really cool. I'm quite happy how Thomas looks. I think that yellow running plate, I really like bright coloured running plates, and the yellow, it's doing it for me. It's definitely doing it for me. So, yeah, here's a cool one to mash up and have a look at. The 3 Dino ones, a lot of people really like these ones. I'm actually personally not a massive fan. I think they're a little bit too over the top and weird for me, in a sense. I think that they just don't make a lot of sense to me as designs. Particularly James, I think it's just weird that he's like a giant, like, being eaten. I don't know, it just doesn't, I don't get it. The same as kind of like this, like, I don't really understand where it's going, TBH, to be honest, if you don't know what that means. Yeah, I mean, I love the fact they've painted on, or like, put specs on the wheels. I think that's cool, and I love to see that in some of the other ones. But again, I just don't know how I feel about the whole dinosaurs on the side of them thing. I mean, it sells, right? Because that's why they keep doing it, but yeah, I'm not a massive fan of the way this design looks. I love the actual, like, figures, don't get me wrong. Like, all these 3 are very cool models. I just not a massive fan of that paint scheme. And one thing which I don't know whether I said about Bill and Ben in my previous video was that I think the funnels suffered again on these guys. They could have been a tiny bit bigger, just so they don't... Ooh, dropping them everywhere. Just so they don't blend too much into the rest of his face. Like it kind of does there. Makes him look a bit almost like bald because he doesn't have a funnel. But that's okay. So yeah, that's Wave 1. So what are my overall thoughts of Wave 1 and 2 now combined? Right, so we've looked at all individual Wave 2 releases of the Thomas Minis train system, if that's what you want to call it. I don't even know. And you can see that when you start lining them up like this, even when you have one of each character, they're starting to look very, very impressive. And I have to say, I think, oh, look, see, Thomas has moved forward because he wants to make sure everyone knows he's the most important. I think these guys are starting to look really, really cool. I think it's a shame that, like, there isn't a track system, or not as we know of yet, or like a better display system, because I mean, as I've already explained in my first review, the fact that there's only 16 spaces in these means you need lots of like them to actually hold all the figures, and for like $30 in Australia, I cannot justify 10 minis for the price of one of those. Especially when they're not very glamorous when the trains are actually inside of them, like they're not very good display cases, but more storage cases. Now, there's one last thing I wanted to say, apart from the fact that like was a living example of the difficulties of obtaining the latter waves of this series because of the fact they look exactly the same as the originals. So particularly to store ordering and store like, you know, managers and stuff, it's very easy to get confused and not see the difference between the series and thus, you know, not order the new series. So it'll be interesting to see how that plays out. as the series go on. But this guy here, this Edward, is just something I want to make a point of. And let's just take a look at this Edward again. And can anyone tell me what is it about him that's different? Yeah, to those of you with keen eyes, you would have seen that I actually got a Sharpie kind of permanent marker and actually, you know, coloured in his buffers. Now, this is actually surprisingly difficult because even with a permanent marker, the acrylic plasticky surface means that they doesn't retain the colour that well. So on closer inspection, you can see the colour is a little bit splodgy. If I just get the camera to focus in. Yeah, you can see it's not quite an even colour, but from a distance for sure. You can just see how having these black buffers really lifts the model compared to just your plain red version and really adds something to these. So if there's one thing I would criticise about these, it would be the lack of painted buffers. But considering that's a trend that Mattel seems to be going in, it's something we can forgive. But if anyone was into customising, I'm just going to show you that yes, it can be done, and yes, it looks really awesome. But anyway, let me know. Have you picked up some of the Series 2? Maybe you don't have Series 2 package the way we do in Australia. I know some countries you can actually see the engines you're buying rather than being blind bag. Let me know what you think. Don't forget to do all those cool things you do on YouTube, like comment and subscribe and all that stuff. Because, as we always say, thanks for watching. That's what we've got time for. This is XtremeTrainz.